Hi, everyone, and welcome so much. Welcome to our event today that we're holding on finding your peace career. I'm Thomas Flores. I'm the Director of Graduate Programs and an Associate Professor at the Jimmy and Rosalind Carter School for Peace and Conflict Resolution. And I'm just really excited to hold this panel today that highlights the work of our students that they've been doing over their careers and giving them a chance to shine and give their advice to you about how they built their careers and advice to people who are looking to do the same. In doing so today, we're a part of Peace Week as a whole. Peace Week is Carter School's opportunity twice a year, once in the fall and once in the spring, to present the work that we do as a community of scholars, activists, practitioners, researchers, and getting a chance to highlight that work, share it with the world, and interact with the communities that we help to serve. Our theme this year is Ideas in Action, Integrating Theory and Practice for Peace and Conflict Resolution. And it's just a really fantastic opportunity to highlight the work that our students and faculty, staff, partners, friends do. It's also kind of excited to do it this year because Mason's turning 50, as my Zoom background is showing. Mason started from a small branch campus, right, of UVA, to a fully independent R1 university. We have 39,000 students. We are the largest university in the state of Virginia. And we're just hitting our stride and still growing as a university. And I know I'm really excited to be part of the university and really excited to be a part of this. So I don't want to speak for that long, but I just wanted to say I'm just really excited to be a part of this and just really having a chance to hear from our students. Graduate students at the Carter School do a really amazing work. And one of the best parts of being able to be director of graduate programs is to meet up with students who are kind of off doing really, really cool stuff and hearing what they're doing, what they're up to, and the innovative work that they do every day. So I will leave it at that. Our facilitator today is David J. Smith, an alumnus of the school. David has worked with really a whole generation of Carter School students in helping to shape their careers. He is, in addition to being a graduate, he's been one of our faculty members, teaching facilitation, heading up our internship program, offering career advice to Carter School students. He's just a great friend of the program. He's also a master facilitator, so I'm going to hand it on to him to facilitate the event. I'd like to thank everyone who's participating, and thanks to all of you for coming. David, it's all yours.
Thank you, Thomas. And I wish I could pronounce Flores the way you do. The way it's I don't speak any Spanish, but you've got that. Oh, I admire people who can do that, but it's your language, right? So of course, I am really pleased to be here today. And as Thomas was saying, I wear a number of hats at the Carter School. One of which is I do a career seminar, which is currently running. I teach facilitation virtually in the evenings. Over the years, I've taught other classes. I graduated with my master's degree from the Carter School in 2008. So the generation of faculty that I experienced, the people that were teaching back in the day, a lot of them have retired or gone on to other things, and they're now professor emeritus and things of that nature. But I'm glad to continue to, over these years, to play a role somehow with the work of the Carter School. As Thomas was saying, besides the teaching, I have an NGO that does humanitarian education. I do career coaching. I spent about 10 years at the U.S. Institute of Peace, though my original work in the conflict resolution field was in the community setting. I was a community mediator in Maryland, where I was from. I was in Fulbright program, taught ADR overseas. So I've had a little bit of kind of the spectrum, which I think is really important. But the best thing I do is doing these kind of things. I like to do working with young people of all age, young at heart, we'll say, people who are really trying to find their way in the world in this field. And, you know, as the world continues to demonstrate to us and prove the worth of the work that we do, right? We don't have to just be following Ukraine. We could be following Ethiopia and Afghanistan and Yemen. Certainly our eyes are on Ukraine right now. And the question for many of us is, how come we weren't there before all of this happening? So I think we always have to ask ourselves the question, at least internationally, domestically, is how do we get ahead of the things that are happening around the world so some of these things don't happen the way they're happening. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to do a real brief introduction to each of our fine panelists. And then I'm going to allow them about 5 minutes to kind of shape their career, tell us what they've done, where they've been, what they're doing now, maybe a little bit about what their future looks like. I'm always interested in what people see themselves going in the future. And then I'm going to come back and then ask them specific questions. And then we're going to have hopefully some good time for Q&A, which I think is the most important part of all this. So I'm going to start off with Megan Borichanski, and Megan and I crossed paths just recently because she came and spoke at the career program that I offer. Megan is currently the assistant director of the ADR program in Fairfax County government, which the director is also a Carter School graduate, and the previous director was a Carter School graduate. So we've really played a lot of roles in the formation of that program. Before her role here, Megan was the headed the family programs at Northern Virginia Mediation Service. I think it doesn't go by Northern Virginia, it just goes by MVMS now, right? It's just an acronym. Is that right, Megan? Trying to get fancy, right? Just use acronyms.
It's MVMS Conflict Resolution Center.
Is that what they call it now? Okay. And then Megan, you graduated, you said in 2019?
Yes.
19, right, okay, great. Sara, Omar, was a student of mine, so I'm always glad to see Sara. Sara and I are both active in the Association for Conflict Resolution, so we cross paths there. Sometimes we cross paths at other times, but I'm so glad to see her. Sara is currently the director at Kearns and West with 7 years of experience, focusing on conflict analysis, qualitative analysis, international relations, and facilitation. And she focuses or specializes on collaborative process design, project management, and multi-party facilitation. She's really doing some interesting work. And every time I have her talk about, she talks about the latest thing that she did. So I'm anxious to hear about that. Chidi, Blyden, we're meeting for the first time, so I'm so glad to meet you. She graduated from the Carter School in 2010, is that correct? And she is currently the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for African Affairs in the Department of Defense, so she's a political appointee. She in the past has worked on the Armed Services Committee and the US Senate, and she really certainly can give us the view of what it's like inside a government, inside the Defense Department, and what's going on right now. So I'm glad that you are there with us today. And then finally, Georgia Hanford. Georgia is a facilitator, logistics coordinator, general purpose service nerd. I like that, or social service nerd, science nerd. She excels at organizing information processes. She currently works in M&E, monitoring evaluation for international development, and does volunteer work in their local facilitating, local community facilitating meetings. They is a holder of a bachelor's degree in sociology from College Park. I was just talking beforehand, University of Maryland, Go Terps, just announced that they are actually housing Afghan refugees on campus, which I think is a great thing. And she has a dual degree in master's in conflict resolution social work from the Carter School and the social work school. This is a very popular co-degree. I must tell you, I think in the last 3 or 4 weeks, I have crossed paths with 2 or 3 other students who have had those two, the master's from the Carter School and the School of Social Work. So Georgia, one of the things I would be interested in finding out of how those kind of things have blended together for you and what that's meant. So having done some basic introductions, what I really want to do is turn it over to each of you. I'll start with Megan. Megan, tell us about what you do, how you got to where you are, maybe a little bit about your planning in the future. And we'll do that, each of you, for 5 minutes, and then we'll ask more specific questions. So Megan, oh, and before I go, I'm going to turn my mic off. You must be hearing the rain where I am. So if you were in the DMV, it may be pouring where you are. It is pouring where I am right now. So I'm going to turn my mic off and I'll turn it on if I have to add something. So Megan, I'm turning it over to you.
Thanks so much, David. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Megan Borchamski, pronounced she, her, hers, and it's just a pleasure to be here. When I was at It was SCAR at the time that I was at the Carter School, and there was not a class like David's or these opportunities in quite the same way, I think, to hear from alumni. So welcome your questions in a bit. I have just recently joined the Fairfax County government as the assistant ADR coordinator in the Office for Alternative Dispute Resolution. So I'm 3 months in, and I'm really loving this role because we incorporate a combination of preventative service and targeted services by case. And so we do a lot of upfront training, both, extensive workshops that can be multi-day workshops and also micro trainings. And those can be based on a specific partnership with a department that is wanting those kind of soft communication skills, team building skills. And we're also starting to just offer those micro trainings to the full employee base. There's a system for that. So we're starting to load those into the system and really advertise them through the newsletters that come out daily. And so I'm excited about that. And on the targeted service side, we offer mediation. We do a lot of conflict coaching, which is something that I felt was missing in my last role. We often have people come in that are interested in mediation, but the other party isn't ready to come to the table yet. And so how do you help the people who are interested develop some targeted skills, to really engage in a constructive way and keep those relationships flowing when they're dependent on them, especially in workplace conflict, which everything that I do now is focused on workplace conflict. So we serve the entire Fairfax County government employee base, which is about 15,000. And so with that conflict coaching, everyone has an opportunity, if they would like to get some skill development in working out those situations. So a lot of conflict coaching on the individual side, mediation, facilitation, sometimes restorative processes on the group side. And so that's what I'm up to now. And another component of that is just trying to further my development as a mediator. Something that I had trouble kind of piecing together was the certification process through the Virginia Supreme Court, because when I started at MVMS Conflict Resolution Center, I was still finishing up my master's program. So I was working full time, I was in school in the evenings, and it's just, in terms of a time factor, it was difficult to do the co-mediation piece, which is one of the requirements if you want to become a state certified mediator. So when I was at NVMS, I managed the family programs, which encompassed 3 programs. And one of them it kind of jumped into my lap about a month into my role. And that was to build this program from scratch as a partnership with the Fairfax Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court. So we developed that court-ordered mediation program specifically for child support cases. Parents would be referred to us, and then we would offer them mediation services to give them more time to hopefully come to a mutually beneficial solution before going to the judge. And that way it was really more of a personal investment, and sometimes just really the space to kind of work through some of the built up resentment and come to a constructive solution. So we had the court-ordered program for child support mediation. We had just self-referred cases. So anything on the interpersonal dynamic could be also child support, anything going on in a relationship, just interpersonal dynamics, intrafamiliar dynamics came to us sometimes. We would have multi-party cases. So those were always interesting. And a lot of divorce cases, trying to divide assets and, just different components that way. So we had that program, the court order program on the mediation side. And then I also was managing classes for co-parenting. So parents from separate households who usually also had a court case, and we're just, trying to build the communication and move from that defensive stance that we so often see, when you're in conflict, that reactive stance, to a more responsive stance, and to be able to talk with each other and communicate productively to make decisions for their children. So I don't, where am I on time? How am I doing, David?
It's great. No, I started my career as a divorce mediator. I was a divorce lawyer, then I went into mediation. This was in the early 90s. And so I really all the family stuff that you're bringing in, how difficult that is and how challenging and how very intensive that type of work is. You know, one of the things I remind mediators is that you're all in all the time. You know, you're observing, you're watching, you're engaging, you're present. It just takes all of you. So I do appreciate that. One thing I did want to point out, Megan, and that has to do with your office, is that your office is rather unique. I mean, what Fairfax County's got going on, I'd be hard pressed to find any other counties in the country that do as much as Fairfax County does, right?
Right, yeah. And my understanding is that we're one of 2 programs in the country. So I credit that to Fairfax County government for creating the space for the program. And then it's on us, you know, to continue developing it and hopefully continuing to have those resources dedicated and more so in the future.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks, Megan. Let me go to Sara. Turn it over to Sara. So Sara, hey.
Hi, thanks, David. Hi, everyone. My name is Sara Omar. I use she, her pronouns. I am a director at Kearns and West, which is a small conflict resolution and strategic collaboration firm. We have offices, about 13 offices now, but I am part of the DC office. Haven't been back to work yet, but hopefully that is soon. So yeah, I graduated from the Carter School in 2018 and have been working at Kearns and West for about 3.5 years now. My role there is I'm building a practice in equitable and inclusive engagement. That's kind of my roadmap at Kearns and West. So a lot of projects that I work on have either a equitable lens or a environmental justice lens. One thing that I would like to point out is that Kearns and West focuses mostly on national resource and environmental issues, but we have been growing and kind of taking on more social justice issues as well. So projects that I often take on will either have issues with issues with climate change, environmental justice, and have been taking on a few more social justice work that are quite interesting, specifically in the policing area. So we are often come in to facilitate conversations between community members and the police department and the city. One thing to point out is we are facilitators or mediators and are always third party or impartial in any process or any project we take on. More projects when they come in the social justice lens, we are taking on a more objective stance, because especially with things that are just have to do with race or equity, you often cannot be neutral, but you can be objective in the process that you're presenting and managing. Yeah, so outside of my role at Kearns and West, I am also the part of the leadership committee for the Association for Conflict Resolution and in the environmental and public policy section. I've been part of that leadership committee for about 4 years now. I am a co-chair for their diversity and equity committee. And I also, in my role, have been leading a development of a diversity fellowship. So it's gonna be, and hopefully in a few years will be launched. It'll be a 2-year fellowship that people can apply and can be housed in an organization where the focus is to just build up their practice and experience in this field. This came out of just ensuring that there's more diversity in the field, because currently there isn't that much. So that's kind of our goal there. And then in terms of just future, what I see in the future, I think that just building up the practice a little bit more of diversity, like of equitable, inclusive engagement, and ensuring that working on projects that are meaningful and have to do with just ensuring that we're helping bring voices to community members that are often feel powerless. So currently just help making sure that we work on finding more projects that feel like you're making a difference there. And David,
add one thing to, add one thing to what Sara is saying. She's talking about diversity in the field. This has actually been a problem in a lot of associations, including ACR. It's a lot of older white folks kind of hang on, right? And we haven't really brought in younger, more diverse, varied backgrounds and so forth. And, Sara is kind of part of that movement. That's really important. And, I encourage you, and I know getting involved in organizations is kind of different today than maybe it was 10 years ago, but getting involved in organizations are really important. So I really appreciate what Sara does there. So thank you, Sara. Let's go to Chidi. I know she's there. She'll be back.
All right, my mouse is in a different place than my computer screen and facing you all. So greetings from the Pentagon. In order for me to be able to be on screen, I have to turn my computer a certain way so that you don't see all the scary secret squirrel things that are behind me. And so that means a really maneuvering obstacle course that I have to go through to be able to unmute my mic. So I'm Chidi. I am the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Africa at the Pentagon. I've worked in the Department of Defense for the last 15 years. I graduated from SCAR, but at the time it was ICAR, and in 2010, actually the transition to SCAR, but part of the time that I was there, I was actually working in the Department of Defense. And so what I loved about the SCAR program was that it was a program designed for, one, working professionals, but two, folks who wanted to be practitioners of practice. And so I would say that on a daily basis, I have the opportunity to work on the issues that I worked on and studied when I was at SCAR, and have been able to do so since 2007 when I first started working in this field. So what I do is I actually work a lot on Africa policy from the Department of Defense. I work on security studies, and I'm considered to be a national security and foreign policy expert. And as I listen to everybody else kind of describe what they're working on, that's what I thought I was going to be doing when I graduated from SCAR. Those were the dreams that I had in my mind. But I went to SCAR at a really particular time when there was a lot of focus on the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War. And so there were a lot of soldiers, as well as a lot of really, really dedicated advocacy and civilian professionals who were worried about conflict and the prevention of conflict in interventions, whether they be military or whether they be peace and conflict studies, who really inspired me to stay in the Department of Defense and continue to put a different type of voice and a spin on what people consider to be traditional Department of Defense equities or defense and security studies. And so I've spent my career really working on elevating one, African voices in the defense, peace and conflict security space, developing policy that really is inclusive of not just multiple voices, but multiple types of interventions. And then three, as I said, being a practitioner of practice, and that means constantly changing and evolving the types of policies that are put out, whether it be in this administration, a past administration, or be future policies that we want to engage. I am a sociology background specialist, so community work and the ability to be able to look at things at the community level is really critical to the work that I do, particularly when you look at different African societies and how they respond to different security challenges. And so I always sort of harken back to my time at SCAR being really formative in the way that I approach my work. I spend a lot of time doing tabletop exercises, which if you were to harken back to what SCAR calls that, I think those are just practical role playing and scenario exercises, which are very real and very relative to the world and the work that we do. At the top, David kind of mentioned, we're seeing how the world is evolving, and the security and challenges that we're seeing are things that are different than things that we've seen, I think, in previous times. But the question is out there, how could we have done this differently, and how could we have prevented something like this? And I think that the emphasis and the focus on doing preventative work, the kind of work that all of you are learning at SCAR right now or at the Carter School is critical to what you'll do. One of the things that I will encourage, because it has been so important to my career, is being in diverse spaces. And so while everybody went and they got to do what I consider to be the fun things of working at community level or working with police forces, I had to come back to the big 5-sided building and like sit in an office and constantly and continuously voice to policymakers why it was that we should be looking at conflict resolution as a starting point and not an end point, why we should be looking at preventative measures as a starting point, not an end point. And the other thing that I would encourage is to have that diversity of voice across the spectrum. And so I'm very unique in my position in that I have worked in the Department of Defense at a think tank. I've worked at the Africa Center for Strategic Studies at the National Defense University. I've worked at Congress on the House Armed Services Committee, informing congressional members and taking them on travel to actually see what it is that we're putting our finances towards. I've worked at an NGO where I helped to develop protection of civilians policy and programming that was used with the armed forces. So combining two different sectors and trying to make sure that there was an understanding between these two areas. And then lastly, of course, being appointed in both the Obama and the Biden administration to continue to purport this work on the main stage as the way we develop America's foreign policy towards a particular region. And so I encourage all of you as you're here and you're thinking about where you think you might end up, there are many places for you to be able to make your mark and for you to be able to do the kind of work that you do at SCAR. I'll end with that, but I'll say there's one other place that I have influence, and I teach at Georgetown as adjunct faculty there. And there's a really specific reason why I decided to teach at Georgetown over other places when I was asked. When I was at SCAR, I went on a practical trip with Dr. Mark Gopin to Israel and Palestine, and I did some of my practicals there. And one of the things that we were able to do because of George Mason's consortium was have students from other universities participate. And there was such a broad gap between what I saw from the GMU students who were advocates, who were practitioners in the field, who had been in the field working, and Georgetown students. Nothing against their program. They're really designed for the foreign service. But that practitioner's experience and that practical experience of being in the field, it was night and day. And so as I teach at Georgetown now, it's because of what I learned at SCAR, and it's because of seeing that gap in preparing future policymakers, future practitioners in the field, to be able to have that sort of very holistic approach to how they are involved in conflict resolution and peace building. So I'll stop there.
Thanks, Chidi. And I'm sorry I mispronounced your name before, but
Okay.
you really do pointing out the fact, the connection between the policy world and the practitioner world, that if you've been in the practitioner world, you're better in the policy world because you know what the people on the ground are dealing with. And I think that's really an important thing you're sharing, that sometimes people are just in the policy world and they don't really know what people are dealing with every day. But if you can get a sense of that, that becomes really important. And I also like the fact that, in a culture like the Department of Defense, where we might think that maybe these alternative versions of dealing with conflict are not that, I know the Army War College in Carlisle does look at some of these other things and so forth, but the culture, you're there to kind of raise a different voice is really important for all of us, that there's another way of looking at things that often we don't consider. So we are glad that you are there to kind of raise that voice. So thank you. Georgia, and last but not least, Georgia, tell us about your work, and it's glad that you're here.
Thanks, David. Thanks everyone for being such tough acts to follow. And thanks to everyone who's here today. My name is Georgia Handorth, pronounced she, they. I graduated May 2020, right into the pandemic, from the Carter School. I did the dual degree in conflict resolution social work. So basically, we went home for spring break. And then my internship was like, so you're not coming back? And the school was like, you're not coming back. And so that was kind of my life for a little while. I'd like to kind of start by just saying, like, a lot of things I'm going to say are going to touch on kind of threads that my esteemed other panelists have touched on, sort of this connection between the dreams versus reality of like what you kind of think what people think when you tell them you're going to school for conflict resolution, and then what you sort of realize when you start looking for jobs or meeting people, finding opportunities. And the fact that I think there is this big shift happening, thankfully, to more of a focus on social justice and more of a focus on community issues and community-based work. But as Megan said, she's one of 2 programs in the country in Fairfax. And, so some of these things are emerging, like Sara said. And so I think I really, looking at that, I grew up actually in an intentional community. And so I learned consensus-based facilitation as a kid, as a middle schooler. And I kind of really didn't have a sense that there were other people out there doing this work, even though now I've definitely discovered there, these giants and these elders in the field who've been doing this as long as I've been alive. And that's really heartening. But I think I took the approach of saying, I'm just going to be a multi-tool. Like I want to facilitate, but I'm also going to learn how to do logistics and organize events. And I sort of carried both of those things together. And I think that really informed, and also to this point of sometimes you just meet people and you make a personal connection and they kind of convince you to go one way or another. I did a year of service with City Year out of undergrad. And I met someone who had a BSW, a social work degree. And so that kind of got me thinking, social work does a lot of things and it deals with systems and kind of these things that I was interested in. And so that was part of what led me to the dual masters, which I think was really kind of to my goal of gaining a lot of skills, learning a lot of things, and really being interested in the way some of these bigger social systems fit together. So not just the practice of mediating conflicts on a one-to-one basis, or even, within a small group, but thinking on this broader level that I think a lot of us have really been thinking about. And I really was keeping the focus on more of a community level or within the US, but now I'm working in monitoring and evaluation for international development and really seeing some of the parallels and also some of the ways that once you get on the national stage, it's much bigger and more complex. And that also happened because of a friend of mine who also graduated from the Carter School. And now I get the pleasure of working with her every day. And so we're doing a lot of both using qualitative analysis skills. I also did sociology undergrad, but also facilitating processes for theory of change development, different types of strategy. Been doing a lot of, we're all learning these remote tools. So really how to structure processes well for virtual spaces and really enable collaboration, including collaboration between remote teams who might be based in other parts of the world. So that's been a fun and exciting thing that I've been learning about, but I don't want to go on too long because I'm very curious to hear the thoughts that people have been having. So I think I'll stop there.
Georgia, one of the things that you brought up is the importance of M&E, monitoring and evaluation. That, when I went, this is not a criticism of Carter School, but when I went in the day, it's 10, 15 years ago, it just works, right? We don't really have to figure out why it's working. And we really changed a lot in the last 10 or 15 years. A lot of it is because of funders require that I'm just not going to give you a chunk of change. You got to show me that's working. So those skills become really important. And I'm telling graduates who are in the room today, if you've got to really take that M&E, studying that is really, really going to be important in the future. So I'm glad that you raised that. So thank you. So what I want to do is I'm going to use kind of my facilitator's prerogative and ask you a couple questions. And we've got about 20 minutes. I'm going to ask you to kind of give me not long answers because I do want to just do a couple of these and then open it up. And then if we don't get any questions, I'll ask you some more questions. So we'll start, I'll ask it, Megan, answer it, then Sara, and we'll kind of go like that. So one of this, I'm always into networking. I really believe that kind of knowing who and what and where advances our career, getting in a network or starting a network becomes really important. So I'm gonna start with Megan. Tell me, how have you networked over the years and how do you connect with people professionally and what it has done for you? And I'm gonna ask Sara, Chidi, and Georgia to answer the same thing.
Thanks, David. Yeah, that has evolved over time for me. I think I started just doing what I could at the Carter School and going to all the events that they had, and then going through the field. I found it really important to be connected on LinkedIn, and I was a bit shy about oh, I just met this person, let me go ahead and friend them on LinkedIn. I felt like it was me trying to take advantage or something. And I wanted it to be really organic connections. And so it kind of conflicted with my personality. But I found that not only does LinkedIn serve for networking with people, but it also serves to follow organizations and to track jobs that become available. And so I would just highlight that. And I know these are 1-minute answers, so
that's great. Thanks, Mary. Sara, what have you done networking wise? Because I know you are a networker.
I think so. My second year at SCAR, I was fortunate enough to get an internship with that was a dual internship with the Association for Conflict Resolution and the Department of Interior. And I think that was my way to start really networking, especially just being involved with the association like ACR was a great way to just meet more people who are doing similar work. And I was introduced to just, oh, there's actually, you can get jobs in our field, just what types of firms are doing conflict resolution or similar work. And then from there, I think just really being able to kind of connect or ask for like people that I get introduced to through the association for just informal interviews, just to know a little bit more about what they're doing. And then I always ask them if like, is there anyone else you think I should talk to? And if they're able to connect me. I find it that everyone is very happy to just like schedule a quick 20-minute just to talk to you about what they do and how they got to where they are. And I think it was a great way to just open my eye to like what types of opportunities are available in the field that I wanted to be in, which was more in the environmental space. And yeah, I think from there it was really good how I got introduced to the firm that I work for now.
That networking, that informational interview and reaching out, a lot of kind of incoming master's degree students is a little bit intimidating. Like, here's this big person, like, they're gonna ask for an informational interview with the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense. It's like, oh no, I couldn't do that. It's like, but I gotta tell you, we've all been there. We've all been at the different ends of the table, and we're all in the same program. And reach out. We want to help each other, right? I don't mind giving 15, 20 minutes. I love doing it. I'm not going to be doing this work forever. I got to pass on to somebody, kind of a thing. So it's good that you've done that over the years, because I do think it pays off really well in the long term. So thank you. And always ask, when you're information over here, always ask, who else can you introduce me to, right? And you start building your network that way. So Chidi, tell us what you've done with networking.
So I'll maybe approach it from the reverse side, from being the big person who has very limited time and is not always able to give that 15, 20 minutes. But I would encourage forums like this. So one of the things that, if there are opportunities on campus where you do get a speaker or you get someone who can share ideas, that in itself is networking. Going to the events and the organizations that hold the big events where you can meet a big group of people who are in your field at the same time. Those are also great opportunities. I want to share maybe just 2 quick anecdotes on why networking is so critically important. My road to SCAR actually became from an internship that I had at the Wolf Trap Foundation, which is out in Virginia. My former boss married a defense attaché from Australia. And when I went to work at the National Defense University, he was studying there, and he introduced me to a man who was actually sitting on the board of ICAR. And it was at a lunch that he said, you might consider this program as something that you should go to. It sounds like it'd be great for you. And that is how I ended up at ICAR. Dr. Grootman was a friend of this defense attaché, who was a friend of my boss, who was weird. The second thing is, when I actually did attend SCAR, the students that I networked with and that I was able to work with have all gone out into the world and into organizations where they have been, leaders in their own right, and have, afforded an opportunity for me able to share with them. One of my classmates was the president of Mali's son. And so when I needed to have a meeting with the president who recently passed away, I could call up my colleague from ICAR, and we talked, and we were able to get, move forth some really difficult conflict things that we were working on. Similarly, as I was coming to this discussion, I just got to send an email to my Canadian counterpart, who is also an ICAR graduate. We did all of our projects together at the same time, and Dr. Michel Graton, it works for the Canadian government.
Connect her up.
Talks about he works on Africa, and so these networks are out there, and like you said, they are just other people that we've worked with, and so never miss an opportunity to try and one, talk to your classmates, but two, also go to larger forums where you'll meet more people like yourself.
One thing that you point out is that, I know I hate to say this, but kind of everything's a networking event. It might be the backyard barbecue, right? And you meet somebody and it's like, oh, I should ask them, and we have to kind of view it that way when we're looking for a career and making it, particularly in a place like Washington. I mean, Washington's not like anywhere else, right? You are going to go to a barbecue and you are going to run to people that can be helpful. And it's only when you talk about yourself that they learn about you. And so, sometimes we're not good in kind of putting ourselves out there. We've got to be comfortable doing that, right? That's important. So thank you. Georgia.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much I can really add to everything that everyone said, but I will say, just in terms of putting yourself out there or kind of having people know what you do, we all are more conscious now about kind of the unpaid internship or unpaid labor, but I think there is an element of sort of being involved in the community, kind of putting parts of yourself out there and kind of letting people see. So one thing that I do is I facilitate meetings for the intentional community where I grew up. And as a result of that, everyone kind of knew like, oh, Georgia grew up and is interested in facilitation. Oh, she went to school, this or that. But there are people who can actually speak to my experience. And when I was looking for a job, my mom put me on blast and was like, hey, everyone, like suddenly I start getting all of these like LinkedIn endorsements. I'm like, why is this happening all at once? And then I saw the email and realized why, but people really connected me with a lot of different folks. And so sometimes you just need kind of that jog to people's memory or give them an idea of kind of what you're capable of, and then they can really go on and talk about it to someone else. So I would say if, there are things you're working on and you just kind of keep a running list on LinkedIn or on Twitter or anywhere that you are, someone can see it and point to that, or they might notice like, oh, I see you post about this a lot, and that keeps you kind of in the top of their mind. So that's another way that's sometimes a little less intimidating than the direct ask, which you should still do, but kind of just figuring out a way for you to have a presence in people's minds and have them have awareness of what specifically you can do and what your interests are.
Yeah, you remind me, don't ever turn down the opportunity for your parents to help you. I tell my kids that and they say, oh, no, I don't want any help from you. I'm saying, yeah, but that's what a parent is for. So worked out, right, Georgia? Your mother sending out that blast, right?
It was very helpful in the end. I would maybe offer some edits in terms of tactics, but it was very helpful, yes.
Okay, right. Parents are not always make it the nicest way to do it, but we do it, right? So let's get some questions from you all. We've got about 10 minutes left. And the easiest thing is just to turn on your mic, because I see everybody here. If you turn on your mic, that means you got a question, right? So I'm looking at here, I see some of my own students here. Matthew, I see you are here, other people here. Let's get some questions out. And it could be to any one of our panelists or just kind of a throw out there, everybody kind of have a question. And maybe even the panelists, if you got questions for each other, sometimes we don't think about that. We can do that too. If not, I've got a couple questions that I can ask. So questions, somebody. Who's got a question? Matthew, you got to have a question. You hearing me, Matthew?
Oh, yes.
Okay, you got to have a question. Ask a question.
Well, thank you first for this panel. It's very instructive and informative, I mean. So the question that I have is about the challenges that graduates from a program like ours may have, either in the academia or in NGOs or even in government's work. I don't know how you connect sometimes with people who come from specific disciplines like sociology, anthropology, or political science. So this is my first question. Second question, one of our strengths is interdisciplinary orientation or perspectives that we bring to the discussion table when it comes to discussing peace and conflict related issues. I don't know how you felt when bringing this interdisciplinary perspective with colleagues who prefer to have a clear methodology that they can associate with a specific discipline, especially when it comes to writing papers or presenting at conferences.
That's good, Matthew. Thank you. Anybody want to take that?
Could I maybe take the last one?
Yes.
I think just because I have probably the most unorthodox place for anything that we're talking about here. So you kind of mentioned at the onset, I work in a largely white male space. And so a young Black woman who is talking about peace and conflict and talking and camaraderie hasn't always been welcomed. But I would encourage, as I said, kind of through my background, it has to be there. And I think some of your personal experience and your personal anecdotes that you add to that allows people to see how you can weave together this very interdisciplinary field that you work in, and it's relative in any sector. And I want to stress that whether you're talking about the business sector, my counterparts who have left the Department of Defense have gone to the defense industry and have worked on global peace consulting for different organizations or governments later on. And so having a sociology background and an understanding of culture and having a biology degree when it comes to biotech issues and being able to weave these things all together is absolutely critical. It's one of those things that people don't think is a transferable skill. It 100% is. Anytime you think that you've mastered one thing, you'll find how interconnected it can be to something else. And so I will just answer that question. But I would encourage you to think of the personal anecdotes that allow you that have brought you to this interdisciplinary study and find the connections to it in whatever sector you work in.
You know, Chidi, you kind of remind me of the fact that there's always been the question of whether we are really a discipline at all, conflict resolution. Really, we're just an adaptation of every discipline, right? That is, people will come to conflict resolution from an environmental standpoint. So it's the environmental is the discipline and the conflict resolution is perceived. Or, you know, you're from the defense field and I'm a lawyer and so forth. And that kind of how you use what you know is the conflict side of it, right? Because we fit everywhere. It's not like we're a pillar. Every field needs conflict. I mean, we are now recognizing climate change and the imperative of climate, the ramification and how important conflict resolution is going to be in that, right? So you can't come up with a field where we're not important, in a sense.
Is in the National Defense Strategy that climate change is going to impact.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was in an NPR report last week, and they said a billion people in 20 years could be impacted by climate change, and we're going to have to be more than we're going to be responding to that, right? Yep. So, anyone else want to take that? Sarah, you want to?
No, I was just going to say, Matthew, for your first question, in terms of how do you connect with people in different fields, I think one thing I learned when my time at SCAR was just starting early to do that research and like ask, because I didn't know that environmental space was what I wanted to do when I started at SCAR. And really, my interest was shaped by talking to a lot of different people and taking different classes. I think it's because it's like it said, like conflict resolution is very broad, and that doesn't necessarily mean like you could be a conflict resolution specialist, but like what does that really mean? It's oftentimes you want to go into a specific space or field after you graduate. And I might just encourage everyone to go start through like asking yourself where you would want to find yourself, and then just talking to as many people as you can. And that can also mean within George Mason. I took classes outside of SCAR, and just took classes on more environmental focused issues, and that helped me solidify my interest in that field. So maybe that means just kind of taking different classes in other like sociology or anthropology, if those are the two that are interest of yours. And so you can kind of get a better idea if that's where you want to focus your career after graduating.
You know, that reminds me, because I went to ask Georgia at least to respond to the fact that you got 2 degrees. You were that social work conflict resolution. What has that done for you, Georgia?
Yeah, so the social work degree, you can actually go 2 routes with it. When people hear social work, they think either, you know, or at least I did, I'll speak from my experience before I met that person in City Year and really learned, I was kind of like, oh, social workers are the people who, you know, come, like I was thinking CPS, like people who come and take children out of homes, kind of like a therapist, things like that. And that definitely is, there's that route. And then there's also sort of public policy and advocacy, they call macro social work. And so I don't have clinical licensure. I don't have a clinical degree to like be a therapist. You know, I took some of that coursework just because it's relevant, you know, human development, different things like that, super useful. But really, we did a lot of thinking about sort of policy systems and how they impact, you know, so kind of the same way that you don't think climate would necessarily have an impact on security, but then you start thinking about like climate impacts where people can live, and it impacts where people can, like the types of food that they can get access to, and it impacts, you know, kind of like what's going on with the wildlife around it. And so it's all part of a system. And we talked about that a lot in social work, about like family systems and different things like that, and communities, and sort of how resources are distributed. And that kind of coming out of my sociology degree, I found really compelling. And then we do a lot of that type work, trying to, again, sort of pushing the development field in different directions and to take different things into account. But part of kind of advocating for locally led development and these different things is really being more aware of the systems that we're working within, and how to, you can't just tell one person to change and expect them to just do it overnight. You have to kind of think about this systems level change and be aware of that. So I think the social work degree, not that the Carter School didn't give me this, but I really just kind of like reinforcing those key parts.
Right.
And then also, so I think it was very complimentary for me and the path that I took with it and my goals. I also do know people who did it and they kind of did it the other way around and did the clinical path in social work, and then we're kind of using the conflict resolution to then support that and like give them the skills to support that, as opposed to me who's kind of using social work to support the skills on the conflict resolution side.
Okay. Thank you. So we've got about 3 minutes left, and I always want to leave it on a high note. So I want you each to tell me one thing you really did well looking for work. Like you said, this is the best thing I could tell you to do of what I did. And then I also, if you want to put in your contact information in the chat, that would be great. I'm going to start with Megan and tell me, Megan, something you did like, I did this really well. This really got me going.
So I think just in this last transition, for me, what really helped was setting alerts, creating accounts on US Jobs, on Indeed, programming things in so that my resume is already uploaded, it's easy access, and setting alerts for what types of jobs I was looking for. You can set filters on USA Jobs according to what would actually be open to you, you know, in terms of security clearance. And the same thing on Indeed. So setting those alerts to your email, and then every time you see something you're interested in, even if it's a bit of a stretch, apply for it, draft a cover letter, tailor the cover letter to that exact position, and learn how to market yourself in a really just authentic way. I think it's important that cover letters be genuine and that come through, and just like really honing in on as many skills as possible. Develop your skills so that you're equipped on the tech side, especially in today's virtual environment. You're really equipped with data organization and collection and what that means, and you're developing the practitioner side of things. So you take courses as much as you can, or if it's just a workshop, community workshop, so that you get facilitation, you get mediation, anything you can get your hands on. Just take a multifaceted approach. So I would say those are just things, I feel like I was hitting it from every angle, and that really helped.
That's great. You know, real briefly, remember, a resume tells me what you've done. A cover letter tells me who you are. And that's really important in cover letters, to speak in a different way in a cover letter about who you are, your values, and so forth. and reach also. If you got 10 things in the job and you got 5 or 6 of them, apply for it. Don't you have to get all 10? Reach a little bit, because you can always learn. I always tell people, if I don't know it, I can learn it. Sara, what would you say?
I would encourage people to get involved in any association that you're interested in. There's great ways that usually there's opportunities for students to volunteer for a conference, and then that way they can, instead of having to pay for a conference, and you can get into, be able to network, or just help, like be exposed to just that field that you're interested in. So either see if there's ways to become a member of any association that you're interested in, or look up any opportunities to volunteer. And that usually will help with just some conference costs, and then we'll have a chance to go to really interesting conferences.
Yeah, I think Sarah's saying, look at ACR, because we can all go to Orlando and maybe you can help out. It won't cost you as much. So we can look into that. Chidi.
I'm going to take a little bit of what Megan and Sara said, and maybe twist a little bit of what Megan said, and that is, take the networks that you do and the work that you do to advocate for yourself and invest in yourself. And what I mean by that is invest in yourself and use those networks to promote yourself. Look, if the world was fair, we wouldn't have to be peace and conflict analysts. Use those networks that you have. You have an insight to some very senior people, and a great school that you went to that has connections all across the board. It's not always just the resume and the cover letter. Use your networks to get ahead as well, and promote yourself and advocate for yourself, to reach a little higher for those positions that you could do, that maybe you wouldn't be able to do through the traditional channels of always applying well. And I'll leave it at that.
No, and it's the Carter School network is something. I mean, Chidi might have had the same experience that I've had, is that there's a lot of Harvard and Yale out there, right? Yeah. And we can compete with Harvard and Yale and Georgetown. We are a great school, great graduates. We can build our own network, and we can, go from there. So thank you. Georgia, what would you recommend?
I think I'll echo everything that everyone just said, and to just plus up what Chidi said, especially early on, it can feel really weird and uncomfortable to ask for help, but just ask for help. That's a skill I've been trying to cultivate, especially people who are like raised and socialized female, like we don't always develop that skill. Mm-hmm. But it really is like, ask for help, accept help when people offer it to you. I have a friend who's really great at writing cover letters, and I just shamelessly like have one of her cover letters. And every time I read one of my cover letters, I go look at hers and I'm like, okay, no, make it 30% shorter and just tell people how great you are, because she's gotten really good at that. And I'm like, why reinvent the wheel? She said I could do this, and this is what I'm going to do. It's my own words, but yeah, and then ask people for those networking opportunities. Just ask people for things.
We have to be used to sell. We have to get used to selling ourselves. Sometimes we're not good at that, right? We have to do that. So we are a little bit beyond 2:00. Thank you all, Megan, Sara, Chidi, Georgia, Thomas, for setting this up. I'm so glad everyone was here. Hopefully you got something out of it today. If you want to put our panelists, if you want to put your contact information in the chat, that would be great. And I'm going to turn it over to Thomas. Turn it back.
Great, thank you, David, and thank you to Megan, Chidi, Sara, Georgia for being here today and for sharing your wisdom. You kind of are just all represent the sort of work that our students do out in the field, and makes me really, really proud to be director. So thank you so much. Thanks for all of you for coming today. Reminder, there's more Peace Week events coming up today and tomorrow. So I hope you can continue to be a part of the week where we kind of celebrate the work that we do at the Carter School. So thanks to everyone, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.